Such beliefs enable man to place himself under the guardianship of women. He trusts himself to accomplish almost anything except to make a decent stew. Well, the current wake up rate is worthy of accolade. To avoid having to exert effort, all a woman has to do is heave a sigh and indicate that she, as a woman, is simply not capable of the task. Even when we all hear around that, what a man can do, a woman can do. And sometimes they say can do better, but here we are. One of the most fantastic flowers of this manipulation through self abasement is the life of a well to do woman today, living comfortably in some pleasantly situated suburban villa, surrounded by children, dogs, other women, by every possible kind of labor saving device, equipped with television sets and second cars. She will tell her husband, possibly a lawyer or engineer, what a lucky man he is, what a fulfilled life he leads, while she, as a woman, is constrained to live a life unworthy of a human being. She says this to the man who has paid for all that trash with his life, and he believes her. In the Bible, it is said that Eve was created from Adam's rib. She is a copy, therefore a species of a lower order. Yet another example of manipulation through self abasement. Can anyone doubt that at some stage in history this story was invented by a woman? She herself did not write it down. Of course, a man did this for her, since her ability to write is a comparatively recent skill. Dang. When she says a man must be able to protect me, it decodes to a man must be able to spare me from all forms of discomfort. When she says I need a man to make me feel secure, it decodes to above all, he must keep his money worries to himself. When she says I must be able to look up to a man, it decodes to be a possible candidate as a husband, he must be more intelligent, responsible, courageous, industrious, and stronger than I am. Otherwise, what purpose would he serve? When she says, of course, I will give up my career if my husband asked me, it decodes to once he's earning enough money, I'm never going to work again. When she says the only thing I want in life is to make him happy, it decodes to I will do everything in my power to stop him from knowing how much I exploit him. When she says I will never bother him with trivial problems, it decodes to I will do anything rather than keep him away from his work. When she says I am there for him alone, it decodes to no other man has to work for me. When she says I love him, it decodes to he is an excellent workhorse. Of course, women use stock phrases like these only when there is a man around to hear them. In the company of other women, they talk about their men quite normally, as they would speak of a domestic appliance, which everyone knows to be practical anyway. When women are among themselves discussing the desirable qualities of a specific man, they will never declare that they want someone to look up to, someone who will protect them. Such twaddle would be greeted with the laughter it deserves. They are more likely to say that they want a man with such and such job. Jobs are synonymous with income level, of course. Old age pensions, widows' endowments, and the ability to pay high life insurance premiums. Or a woman might well say, the man I'm going to marry must be a little older than I, at least half a head taller and more intelligent. By which she means that it looks normal for a somewhat older, stronger, more intelligent human being to provide for a younger, weaker, more stupid creature. Psychology states that happiness comes with laughter, faith with prayer. This is true, but only for men. If he treats woman as a superior being, she will become a superior being for him. Women are more gifted to differentiate between fact and fiction. Hmm? Hmm. Let's read on. I'm not sure. Unlike other methods of manipulation, good manners are not the result of conditioned forms of behavior based on profound psychological motivation. Children are taught to behave relatively late, and manners are particularly easy to recognize as a woman's form of exploitation. It's a puzzle why even today such old tricks are still successful. The advice a mother gives to her teenage son going out on his first date is a good example of women's audacity. Pay the taxi, get out first, open the door on the girl's side and help her out. Offer her your arm going up the stairs, or if they are crowded, walk behind her in case she stumbles so that you can catch her. Open the door into the foyer for her, help her out of her coat, take the coat to the cloakroom attendant, get her a program. Go in front of her when you are taking your seats and clear the way. Offer her refreshments during the intermissions and so on. And on top of that, we should not forget that the average type of play is an outdated form of entertainment because most of them are aimed at the intellectual level of women, as indeed are many of the things we like to label cultured. Pity the poor man who has to submit to all this. He probably has an inkling that not only he, but the assembled company of directors, actors, and producers awaiting them are there only to perform for the background of women and her clique. This background is simply a place where she can indulge in her inane orgies, where she and her women can take part in their grotesque masquerades, with the extras, the men, suitably costumed in black. Now, this is an old book, so what she is likely referencing is the plays and stuff that used to go on back then. And I quite agree with her. You know, for the most part, the plays of back then, of the early 1900s anyway, were mostly centered around some form of romance. Where the female character is doing her own thing and she meets this guy, and eventually let's just chalk it up to the whole Titanic story. We have already mentioned women's lack of emotional capacity. The fact that women make every attempt to suppress man's ability to express his emotions is a certain indication of this. Yet she still contrives to create the myth of feminine depth of feeling and vulnerability. See, women are emotional, they are not emotionally intelligent. That is why, as a man, if you do a good thing, it's not remembered. If you do a good thing, it's expected. But once you do a bad thing, the bad thing you did cancels out every good thing you've ever done for her or in her life. It's the reason she would say you don't talk to her enough. And then when you begin to talk to her, when you begin to tell her things about your life, in a later argument, she'll use those things against you. As her emotions are always faked and never felt, she can keep a clear head. You can take advantage of someone's feelings only if you are not involved yourself. Therefore, she turns her partner's emotions to her own profit, only taking care to make sure she believes only taking care to make sure he believes she feels as deeply as he himself, perhaps even more deeply. She must make him believe she, as a woman, is much less stable, much more irrational, much more emotional. Only thus may her deception remain undetected, but manipulation has in any case already taken care of that. The basis of any economy is a system of barter. Therefore, someone demanding a service must be able to offer something of equal value in exchange for it. But as a man must fulfill his sexual desires, and since he tends to want to possess exclusive rights over one vagina, the prices have risen to an extortionate level. This has made it possible for women to follow a system of exploitation which puts the most exploitative robber barons to shame, and no man remains exempt. The concept of femininity is essentially sociological, not biological. Even a homosexual is unlikely to escape without paying his dues. The partner whose sexual drive is less developed quickly discovers the weak points of the other, whose drive is more intense, and manipulates him accordingly. It will always be the woman or the female partner in any homosexual relationship who exploits the man, for to be a female means to be undersexed. And when you look into lesbian relationships, you find that women will still manipulate a masculine woman. It doesn't matter. As long as you pose as a man, you'll be manipulated as such. In lesbian relationships, the one with the male role carries themselves as a man, and the one in the female role carries herself, of course, as a woman. And then it makes you wonder, why, as a woman who is attracted to women, you call yourself a lesbian? Why are you attracted to women who pose as men, who have masculine features? And then why also, as a woman who is attracted to women, why do you take on masculine features? If you both are women, you are supposed to be, if you are both women and you say you both like each other, you're interested in the same gender, why aren't you automatically compatible? Why do you have to configure your psychology into a masculine psychology in order to attract a woman? And why does a woman have to be attracted to your masculine psychology if you are a woman and she says she likes women? In earlier societies, a bride had to be a virgin to be worth anything. And even today, a girl who has little sexual experience will have a higher market value than one who has had a number of lovers. Chastity in a man, on the other hand, has never been worth much. As women do not really care for men, they are not much interested in their chastity. For this reason, a boy can never be raped by an older woman, only seduced. But let a man play that game with an adolescent girl. he will be lynched as a sex criminal by a female mob. See, women do not really care. In fact, women are more attracted, to a man who has had more sexual relationships, more sexual experiences, so that they can be assured that he knows what he's doing in the bedroom and all that. And also for the fact that he's been with other women, and they've deemed him fit to be with them, it speaks to a woman that she can bypass all her labeling. She doesn't have to go through all those tests of character, test of person, test of this or that with him. For the fact that other women have done these tests, she's fine. She just has to go straight into the experience. For longevity, body count should be discussed on the first date, like for in the initial points of meeting, because why would you say body count is not important? Like, if it's a casual thing, yeah, I don't I don't have any tags on that. But if you are looking to settle down and get serious with somebody, and she or he, mostly she, he or she, either way, is saying that they don't want to talk about their body count, then I think you should skip, because down the line, long term, this thing is going to become relevant. You're going to want to understand the things she has been through before you engage with her on that level. And the thing is that sex for women is emotional, while for men is physical. And so, as a woman, when you've had sex with multiple people, it means that you are emotionally invested in multiple people. You've liked them to the point where you see yourself in some la la land with them, and that proceeded to that proceeded to you being deluded enough to take your pants off for whoever this person is, whoever these people might have been. And so if you've had that many experiences, that many emotional commitments, then I don't think the topic of body count should be skipped on the first date, in the initial point of meeting, if you are planning to settle down with someone. It is ironic that men consider ordinary prostitutes so very contemptible. They are among the few women who frankly admit that they make money by renting out a specific orifice of their bodies. The female callings of prostitute, actress, model, singer, or dancer are not practiced by men. But whereas actresses, singers, dancers, and models work with safety nets being the men who catch them when they don't feel like working anymore. A prostitute has no such recourse. When she is tired or ill, there is no one there waiting hopefully for the time where he will be allowed to support her. No man in our society would allow a prostitute to exploit him as a fashion model, for instance, could. Women too despise the common prostitute, but for a different reason. They despise her for her stupidity. A woman who sells her body so ineptly is shockingly stupid by female intelligence standards. They admire only such women as are able to exact an exorbitant price for their favors. For example, those who marry Rothschilds, Aga Khans, or Rockefellers. They have impressed on men the concept that prostitution is a sordid profession to intimidate men who otherwise might one day be able to draw such parallels. In the realm of sex, more than any other, man is a victim of the principles of efficiency according to which he is manipulated. Indeed, he sets his own standards: three times in a row, very good; twice, good; once, satisfactory. If he fails as a sex machine, he is, in his opinion, a total failure. Even if he is a brilliant scientist, he will never again be really happy. Women know this and take advantage. For example, A. She can pretend she is unaware of her husband's lack of virility and continue to praise him for his prowess, probably the most frequent method applied. B. She can make a man believe his sexual failure is a real handicap so that he considers himself lucky she stays with him. C. She can threaten to expose his sexual inadequacy unless he does everything she wants. Since a man would rather be called a thief or a murderer than impotent, he will bow his head to his fate and do what he is told. Manipulation as a bluff. Women have taken great care to ensure that their lobby, the clergy, are always men. Firstly, because the female image might be damaged if they represented their own interests. Men might think them calculating. And second, because they know men rate feminine intelligence rather low, which is why they can only influence a man's emotions. Advice from another man, and one respected from childhood, is much more likely to be listened to and taken. Although this advice always benefits women, for example, they will advise a man to stay with a woman he doesn't love or support children he never wanted. It does not reflect hostility on the part of this lobby towards normal men, but it is a direct consequence of that lobby's financial dependence on women. Women could survive easily without the church. They only need it for the training of men and children, or as a setting for the display of specialized wardrobes. But the church would be ruined without the support of women. Children can be trained, and today are often raised without the church's help. It is entirely possible that women one day might give up the nave of a church as the most effective background for a white dress. They would withdraw their financial support.
Even till nowadays, a lot of women live in the church. They attribute their self worth to whatever worth the church gives them. However, some men, most, well, some men, yeah, only, only, only associate with the church when there is a genuineness of a feeling. For example, Frankie Yale of years back of the Italian mafia. Was Frankie Italian? Yeah, it wasn't Gypsy. Frankie Yale of the Italian mafia, would give to the church when he walked through the streets and saw children, homeless children out of school and such. He would donate money or donate coal. He would donate money, for coal to furnish homes during the cold seasons when these people couldn't afford it. But the women lived in the churches every day and nothing was happening. You can see that today as well. Women do live in the churches and not much is happening. And men only go there when there's a genuineness of a feeling, when there's something they are really keen on appreciating, when they feel they have lost center, etc., etc. And personally, I do not think God really minds. Also, when you are, as a man, when you are getting involved with a woman and she presents herself as having found God, having been born anew, she's a Christ girl. I would like you to not immediately take all that in. I would like you to do a bit of digging, you know, because most of the time, I'm not saying that, yeah, I said most of the time, before a girl gets to the point where she has found God, she has probably been dancing with other things for a long, long time. The things that have led up to her finding God must have been horrible. She must have been in horrible places, done horrible things, and has come to the realization that, okay, I think it's high time I put this down before it takes my life or some dire consequence. And now she's been born anew. So if you intend to invest in such a religiously presenting market, I would advise you do your digging. From the moral point of view, everyone should have the right to lie. It helps us to stave off society's often too bold attempts to supervise us and thus minimizes our own personal fight for existence. The disadvantage of lying is that if everyone does it, it loses its usefulness. If anyone is gullible enough to believe something that is not true, he must himself love the truth and assume a similar love in others. Consequently, a lie becomes a luxury. It has rarity value. The rarity value has to be maintained by incessant denigration in the interest of liars. Therefore, it is very important that women teach men love of the truth, for only if he loves the truth is she able to afford the luxury of lying. Mm. Of course, women would never openly forbid a man to lie. They simply associate lying with repugnance. This is easily done by means of the chosen system of religious faith, which connects lying with the idea of fictional punishment, or by a kind of personal magic. If a mother tells her child not to lie to her because it is bad, he will automatically have a guilty conscience if he does. She does not even need to be specific about this badness. The child believes her implicitly, is dependent on her, and relies upon what she tells him. He believes she would never lie. This is nonsense, of course, for mothers constantly tell their children the most barefaced lies. The same magic is involved when later on a woman convinces her husband that unfaithfulness is something squalid and wretched. Once in a while, he will sleep with another woman, but he will rarely leave his wife, although her admission of boundless indifference should be a signal to him to leave her at once. An earlier insight here would be that women do not support women. Women only support women when they agree with what the other woman is saying. If this woman who is speaking is not speaking your mind, then you do not agree with her. Instead, you call her a pick me, depending on what purpose she's serving, depending on what information she's putting out, depending on what her topic of discussion is. Women do not support women. If one friend has what the other lacks, she will waste no opportunity to take it. She might play the long game, but eventually she will take what the other person had by one means or another. And also in modern day experiences, this is just my personal take. But if you're a girl and you have a female friend and your female friend addresses you as ML when texting, I think that should be a clear sign for you to dip, like dip. Children are endearing, which in itself is no reason for producing them. The creation of a child is in effect the creation of an adult, man or woman. Most adult men live in a state of permanent hell, and the happiness of most women is not only primitive but obtained mostly at other people's expense, so that there is no justification for producing them. It would be mistaken to maintain that only women are interested in having children. Men want them too. Children are one of the two or three excuses by which they justify their subjection to women. Women, on the other hand, need children to justify their laziness, stupidity, and lack of responsibility. Both sexes, both sexes exploit the child, therefore, for their own ends. Thanks to wife and child, man has acquired an excuse, an artificial justification for his wretched existence, for his subjection. He calls this arbitrarily created system, this holy unit, his family. Woman accepts his services in the name of the family, accepts the hostages he entrusts to her, and proceeds to carry out his desires by binding him even more tightly to her and blackmailing him until he dies. Both man and woman only stand to gain by having children, otherwise, they would not produce them. Man's advantage lies in the fact that he appears to lead a more meaningful life and that he is able to become a slave forever. And woman has all the other advantages. These must be considerable, for any female today has the choice between a professional life or having children, and nearly all of them choose children. And like I said, this is an old book, so right now anyway, the current shift is that they are not choosing children anymore. But we'll see where that gets us. Currently, the Western gender war epidemic has not yet affected Africa, or at least Nigeria for now. A bit of it has, but there is a much larger wave, and yeah, it is coming. It is coming. We will begin to see certain roles in, let me say, the law faculty, like divorce attorney, become more and more rampant among Nigerian youths who are studying the legalities. We will begin to hear women whose knowledge only revolves around their hometown talk about things like patriarchy, and we will begin to experience a female loneliness epidemic, as a lot of men will give up on things like marriage when they discover that there's really no advantage in it for them. A pile of linen, neatly ironed, lies in the closet. The roast is nicely browned all over. A curl falls in exactly the right place over the forehead. The pink of the nail varnish matches exactly the pink of the lipstick. The laundry, clean and fresh, is fluttering in the breeze. 10 pairs of shoes stand clean and shiny in a row. The windows are polished till they make the passers-by blink. The husband went up to work on time. The children are playing in the sun. Everything is perfect, and woman's world is 100% in order. At such time, their sense of pleasure and happiness reaches its zenith. And just to make this exhilaration last, a woman will quickly bake another cake, water the rubber plant near the living room window, or get on with knitting a sweater for her youngest child. Not even psychologists can grasp it, although they spend their lives studying the female mind. Being men, they must find it more interesting than their own. LOL. But it would never occur to them for a minute that woman's so called psyche is unfathomable merely because of the absence of intelligence, that feminine work appears unattractive to the male only because he is incapable of imagining the required degree of stupidity. Not even psychologists can grasp it, although they spend their lives studying the female mind. Being men, they must find it more interesting than their own. but it would never occur to them for a minute that woman's so-called psyche is unfathomable merely because of the absence of intelligence, that female work appears unattractive to the male only because he is incapable of imagining the required degree of stupidity necessary to be able to enjoy it. Most men will never admit the depth of their wife's stupidity. They agree that women are not terribly clever, but grant them intuition or instinct instead, and they like to call this a feminine instinct as opposed to that of an animal. Unfortunately, this famous female instinct is really nothing but a euphemism for statistical probability. Women interfere and give opinions about everything, and since they are so stupid, they don't realize that they are making fools of themselves. According to the law of averages, their forecasts will be correct now and again. In any case, most of their predictions are negative or vague. Women's silliness is but the natural result of their attitude to life. By the age of 5, any girl will have been persuaded that she wants to get married and have a home and children. And when girls are 10, 15, or 20, they still want the same things. So if a woman decides, even as a child, to live at a man's expense, what good will intelligence and reasoning be to her? She must keep her mind free for her future man, otherwise, she could not respond to all his inclinations and interests and praise him for them. As a child, how can she determine what type of man she will marry? What use will it be if she opted to become a socialist? Demonstrating female students are usually associated with demonstrating male students, when later on she might decide to marry a well to do manufacturer. Suppose she became a vegetarian. What happens if she later marries an Australian cattle farmer? What is the use of a woman becoming an atheist when she may spend her life within the rose covered walls of a church? There is virtually no difference between an unmade up, bald, naked woman and an unmade up, bald, naked man, except their reproductive organs. Any other difference to them is artificially produced. A man becomes a man because he develops his intelligence, and through his development, his productivity. His appearance changes very little. A woman becomes a woman by means of gradual stultification and by deliberately transforming her external appearance, and this differentiation between the sexes is prompted exclusively by women. As we've said, a man is considered masculine only after a series of manipulations on the part of women. A woman, on the other hand, is the author of her own transformation and produces femininity by means of cosmetics, hairstyle, and clothes. Woman regards her natural self merely as the raw material of a woman. Not the raw material, but the end result has to be judged. Unmade up, without curls and bracelets and necklaces, women are not yet really present. This explains why they do not mind running around in curlers or with cold cream on their faces. It is not they at that stage. They are still occupied with the process of becoming them. They succeed with this sort of make believe all the more easily because they are not hampered by any kind of intelligence. Take care your lips stay smooth, advises, for example, one well known magazine. Brush your lips daily with a wet toothbrush and use a lip salve with regularity. Never use pearl lipsticks. Don't forget to take your measurements. Your pelvic dimension should never be more than 9 inches larger than your waist. Always brush your eyebrows into a becoming sweep before outlining them in pencil. You will look completely natural if the lines are vertical nearest the bridge of the nose and carefully toned with two different colors. Always keep a mirror in your kitchen. It will help you control your face. You will notice if you frown or make faces while you are cooking, or if your hair is in disarray. Women are grateful for all these rules. They do not have enough intelligence or imagination to think them out for themselves. They follow them religiously, measuring their pelvic dimensions, brushing their lips, outlining their eyebrows, and hanging up little mirrors in the kitchen to avoid wrinkles caused by thinking. There are women who oil their bodies all over every morning and not following medical advice. There are those who twist their hair around 30 odd curlers every few days and spend at least half an hour making up their eyes. And as they, thanks to all these efforts, which a man feels are totally absurd anyhow, grow stranger, more incalculable and more feminine with each passing day, it is often precisely this type of woman who attracts the most willing slaves. Crazy. You meet this girl and she's pretty. You can tell it's makeup, of course. But you meet her, you go with her, you date her or whatever. And inherently, you do not like when you don't like being made to wait. If you're trying to go somewhere, if you have a reservation, for example, by like 5 p.m., as a dude, you can get ready in less than 30 minutes. It will take this woman an hour plus, hopefully, to get ready. But you don't like being made to wait. And you also know that she's a makeup freak. So why then do you go with her? Why do you deny your own nature in order to please somebody else? Even for a woman with an average type of mask, the rules are getting more and more complicated. If she goes swimming, for example, her makeup must be waterproof, her legs and armpits hairless, her body oiled, and her hair completely hidden by a cap covered with rubber flowers. I saw some tour. There's a lady, there's a performer on tour, you know. I don't know her name. I think something along the lines of Summer Walker. So anyway, she was performing in this wine glass. Yeah, like that's the prop. She was inside the wine glass, and inside the glass there was some clear water, right? So she enters it and she's singing and doing her thing. And at the end of the performance, the water is brown. Yeah. So most people can tell that it's the makeup that has, sifted into the water and all that that's been dissolved by the water of her skin. But the comment section made that seem completely normal. And, it behooves me to ask, this is not let me say, a bodybuilding show, a bodybuilder show. Where they tan and oil them. If you don't have a natural tan, yeah, they spray tan. So that the purpose of bodybuilder spray tan is for the angles, is for the cuts of your muscles to be seen clearly. If you are pale, if you are plain white, the judge is not going to be able to see your muscle definition as easily as if you were a bit darker. So I want to understand why she has makeup all the way to her legs and is being dissolved into the water. But, the particular field chosen by any young woman as a hunting ground will depend to a large extent on the level of income of the man who has previously been her slave, in other words, her father. The daughters of men in the upper income brackets will choose colleges or universities. These offer the best chances of capturing a man who will earn enough to maintain the standards she has already acquired. Besides, a period of study for form's sake is much more convenient than a temporary employment. Girls from less well off homes will have to go into factories, shops, offices, or hospitals for a time, but again with the same purpose in mind. None of them intend to stay in these jobs for long. They will continue only until marriage, or in cases of hardship, to pregnancy. This offers women one important advantage. Any woman who marries nowadays has given up her studies or her job for the sake of the man of her choice, and sacrifices of this nature create obligations. Therefore, when women work and study, it merely serves to falsify statistics and furthermore to enslave men more hopelessly than ever, because education and the professions mean something very different when applied to women as opposed to men. When a man works, it is a matter of life and death, and as a rule, the first years of his life are decisive. Any man of 25 who is not well on his way up the ladder can be considered, to all intents and purposes, a hopeless case. At this stage, all his faculties are being developed, and the fight with his competitors is a fight to the death. Behind a mask of business friendship, he is constantly on the watch for any sign of superiority in one of his associates, and he will note its appearance with anxiety. If the same associate shows signs of weakness or indecision, it must be taken advantage of at once. Yet man is only a tiny cog in a gigantic business machine, he himself being in effect exploited at every turn. When he drives others, he drives himself most of all. His orders are really orders from above, passed on by him. If the men at the top occasionally take time to praise him, it is not in order to make him happy, it is only to spur him on, to stimulate him to greater effort. For man who was brought up to be proud and honorable, every working day is merely an endless series of humiliations. He shows enthusiasm for products he finds useless. He laughs at jokes he finds tasteless. He expresses opinions which are not his own. Not for a moment is he allowed to forget that the merest oversight may mean demotion, that one slip of the tongue may well end his career. Yet woman, who is the prime cause of all these struggles and under whose very eyes these fights take place, just stands aside and watches. Going to work means to her flirting and dates, teasing and banter, with the odd bit of labor done for the sake of appearances, work for which as a rule she has no responsibility. She knows that she is only marking time, and if she does have to go on working for one reason or another, at least she has had years of pleasant dreams. She watches men's battles from a safe distance, occasionally applauding one of the contestants, encouraging or scolding, and while she makes their coffee, opens their email, or listens to the telephone conversations, she is cold bloodedly taking her pick. The moment she has found Mr. Right, she retires gracefully, leaving the field open to her successors. And so, like I said earlier, this this wave, will soon hit Africa, Nigeria as a focus. And we will soon see in coming years a girl who currently sells bean cakes go from that to some uninteresting course in school and come out of that and sit and expect to marry, you know, marry the right man, marry rich, marry conveniently, all the while doing things that she thinks will attract her to this certain category of men because of the indoctrination of Western fallacy from her associations. You see, I see on certain podcasts, talk shows, and whatnot that women are asked what they want their dream man to look like, what they want him to earn, blah blah blah, and they gather those statistics and tell them that what they are looking for is the top 0.01% of men. I do not believe that to be true. I do not believe the aspects of that rarity to be true. You know, there is, in my opinion, an abundance of a certain class of men. You know, a certain, there are men who earn a lot of money, who have these body structures that these women want, who are all these things, who check all these boxes. But the thing is that these men do not want you. These men do not want you, women, whatever it is you. No, no, they don't. He has to marry rich. You know, his body has been honed by, he has had to stay in top physical shape in order to defend his empire, the empire that his great grandfather handed down to his grandfather, handed down to his father, who in essence is being handed down to him as we speak. He has to be in physical, spiritual, emotional, financial, and whatever else shape to protect that dynasty. So he will marry rich. He will marry a daughter of another dynasty in order to bond those empires and grow them from there. He's not going to marry you, whoever you think you are. Stop searching. Stop. Even the rich ladies will tell you that they have to they have to marry rich men. They have to keep this they have to keep these accomplishments within themselves. You know, the dynasties in Monaco, the dynasties in Madrid, the dynasties in Arab countries, they have to keep this wealth alive. You are not equipped. You are not equipped to keep this wealth alive. You do not know what it has taken, structures they've been raised on from day one. You don't know what the day in the life of a grandchild of a mafia is like. You do not. And you do not want to. You think it's fun and games. You think these statistics are fun to say, are nice to have, until you put yourself in the flipping shoes of what it takes to attain those statistics. Then you will know. You know that you actually do not want a rich man. You don't want a man who, at any moment, a butler can come in, whisper in his ear. He stands up, you know, you are telling him, don't do this, don't do that, and he smacks the shit out of you, smacks you out of his way because he has to go get something done. He knows what he has to do. He might not like it, but he needs to go get this thing done to ensure the future that you are going to be a part of, etc., etc. A lot of you women don't even understand how to insert yourself into rich people's fears. You know, you go into a certain event, and the discussions you bring up are, you're talking about religion, you're talking about politics, you're talking about weather,
and the rich people, they're just, side glance and turn away, and they want to avoid you for the entirety of the event as much as possible. Or you happen to, meet up with this certain rich family or rich man, and let's say he asks you to go to his cellar and pick out a bottle of wine, and you go pick out the most expensive bottle. That's just sad. He looks at you, and that's just sad, because what you should do there is to look for the oldest bottle of wine, the wine that has the most history. If his cellar consists of bottles between the 1900s and, let's say, okay, 1900s to 1960s, your best bet would be to find a bottle that is dated in the 1800s, and then you read out a year, give it some thought, and he'll be like, excellent choice, or in fact, if there is potted wine in vases on the floor, that's your best bet. And you have to be smart as well, because there could be some writing on it, like with some writing on it, and you can be like, this is Hebrew. I don't know my Hebrew that well. What does this say? And you'll be like, well, that is from the ancients, blah blah blah. The wine tree was on top of a mountain, and every 10 years the people would go up there, they would pray, harvest the fruits and store it. And you'll be like, how do you know? Okay, let's have some of this while we talk. And you are in. For most of you men do not know that. You think being with a rich guy is well, whatever the case, I'll be ending this here. Um, have a good one, guys. Take good care of your mental health all year round.